Hi, girls. Welcome to your review podcast for your test on Chapter 12 and 13, Byzantine and Islamic Art. I am in Chapter 13 right now because I know we went through that very quickly, so I want to make sure I get to some things that I didn't get to in class. So I'm starting with this slide that I showed you briefly in class, but just wanted to emphasize these key points to you. So the first thing is that Islamic art did not contain imagery because it was deemed as idolatry. So instead, you see abstract forms and patterns. You'll see a lot of verses from the Quran, their holy book. You will see arabesques and calligraphy. Okay, so almost never will you see representational imagery. Mosques are the most important contributions of Islamic art. They were influenced by both Roman architecture and mostly by Byzantine architecture. We had different types of mosques. We had central plan mosques, which were the ones that were obviously influenced by Byzantine churches. And then you have other mosques that are more of a basilica plan, like a rectangular plan, and that contain many, many columns. Those are known as hypostyle mosques. Islamic art was influenced by Byzantine art, and Byzantine art was influenced by the Romans. And the Islamic rulers had this dual responsibility for both religious and political concerns. So that being said, I have another slide here of things to make sure you know for the test tomorrow. So make sure you know why all of these things are important. Some of them I went over in class, a couple of them I didn't. Like I don't think we got to Andrei Rublev. He was an important painter that you need to know about. One thing I wanted to touch on again quickly was luxury items because I know there's some questions about that and I know we breezed over it. So let me just skip back here to our first luxury item, which is this rug. So we talked about the importance of these carpets to the Islamic faith and how they pray on the floor, and these were often seen in mosques and in homes. And all of the luxury items that I'm going to show you were for private use, so they would have been in a wealthy person's home, or many of them were owned by rulers as well. So again, very intricate, featuring geometric patterns, organic shapes. You see some vine-like pattern in there. So very typical of an Islamic rug and Islamic decoration. This, however, is not typical of Islamic art, and this is obviously a utilitarian object, shows the artist's skill with metalworking. It's made of brass, and this would have been owned by, like I said, a wealthy Islamic ruler. You can see some Arabic incised up here near the rim of the basin. And I forget what's going on here. I think it's some sort of hunting scene. So this would be an exception to all of the Islamic art we've seen previously, in that you can see some zoomorphic images. Hopefully you remember that term that I used in class, just meaning representational things, animal and people. Okay. Yeah, Mamluk hunters and Mongol enemies are on the basin. The last luxury item I have to show you is yet another representational piece, and that is because this was made for a Christian. So in the end of the chapter, it talks about how many Christians visited these Islamic lands for pilgrimages and things like that. And so they, while they were there, sought to purchase artwork. And so Islamic artists created things like this to cater to Christians visiting their region. Okay, so you have scenes from the life of Christ filling this canteen, and this was a utilitarian object. It held, some sort of liquid, so not just an artwork, but also used for something. Okay, so luxury items in clothing are often small, often portable, um, often made for very wealthy people or rulers, and they are really for private use, private devotion, or just to, keep in their homes for, various things. So quickly going back to mosques, you need to know the parts of a mosque. You're not going to have to label them, but you need to know the function of them. So do you all remember what the Qibla is? The Qibla wall. Okay, we have the Qibla wall, and then we have the mihrab. So hopefully you are remembering our discussion in class and how it is important for um, Muslims to pray in the direction of Mecca. And so the Qibla wall is telling them which way to pray. The mihrab is simply a niche or a recessed area in the Qibla wall. Okay, so I just want to make sure you understand that. In this particular mosque, which this is more of a basilican plan mosque, so it's like a rectangle, you have a prayer hall, you have that big open courtyard. We saw a bunch of those. And then you have a minaret. So hopefully you all remember what a minaret is, okay? Hopefully you are recalling that the minaret is where Muslims call one another to prayer. So they pray 5 times daily, and so sometimes they sing or something like that. But that's how they notify people to pray. And I apologize for skipping around, but I'm, looking at your test and really trying to make sure that I cover everything. I noticed that there were a few questions about geography, and so I wanted to emphasize to you to make sure you're aware of the Islamic region and all of the lands that the Islamic people, the Ottoman Turks, and other groups of people conquered. So it's a very extensive area of land. We talked about how most Islamic mosques, or the greatest Islamic mosques, are located in Spain. So if you remember the mosque at Cordoba, okay, that's right here. And then obviously parts of Egypt, obviously Turkey, there's Constantinople, parts of modern day Russia, obviously Iraq, Iran. So just make sure that you're familiar with this map and the area that we're talking about. Definitely know about the Dome of the Rock located in Jerusalem. Um, Marked the area where Muhammad was said to have ascended into heaven. Very important. It is a dome on a centralized building. Um, oops, sorry. Anything else I wanted to say about that? You can say that it was influenced by San Vitale, Byzantine church. Okay, so that's also important. And I want to skip to the snail shell minaret so I can give you another look at that. Oh, and this mosque here, the Great Mosque at Kairouan, would be a hypostyle mosque. Remember, we looked at all of those columns, the forests of columns. Okay, and then this minaret here, the Malwiya minaret of the Great Mosque at Samarra, which is, by the way, the largest mosque in the world. Notice that that's underlined, so you definitely need to know that. So this minaret is unique from all of the other minarets we looked at because it is a lofty, snail-like minaret, whereas most of the minarets we looked at were very tall and skinny. Some of them were not, but this has just a very unique shape to it. So make sure you remember this one. This is something else that I skipped over, but you need to know about the Ottoman Empire. It was founded by Osman the First, and basically they conquered a ton of land in the Islamic region. So I showed you that map and showed you how vast it was, and that is because of this Osman the First and the Ottoman Empire. Okay, so you just need to know that the Ottoman Empire was founded by Osman the First and expanded for a period of 2.5 centuries throughout the vast areas of Asia, Europe, and North Africa. And by the 5th century had become one of the world's greatest powers. We also briefly looked at this mosque. It's clearly influenced by Hagia Sophia and has those extremely tall, slender minarets. What I really want you to remember about this is the architect. His name is Sinan. He's a really important Islamic architect. So make sure you remember his name and that he's responsible for the Mosque of Selim II, who, of course, was a Muslim ruler of the time. So I'm going to end the podcast soon, and I wanted to go back to chapter 12 just to review a couple points with you. First of all, you need to be able to discuss the evolution of Byzantine architecture, starting with early, then middle, then late. These would be some wonderful examples to talk about. So go through your notes and remember what we discussed in class, how they're different. You need to know about squinches and pendentives. Where are they used? What do they look like? Which churches use pendentives and which churches used squinches. Here are some key points just to review with you. Most Byzantine churches are centrally planned. Most of them contained domes. And that just reminds me of, I gave you guys a plan, a church plan, but I gave you a cruciform plan, and I had you label the nave, the apse, the aisles, the narthex, the facade, the ambulatory. I think that's it. So you need to make sure that you're able to do that, okay? So take a look at your church plan and make sure you're able to label those parts. Early Christian art has a more classical influence. We talked about the image of Christ and how that changed, so that's also important. But you definitely need to know Byzantine stylistic characteristics. Lots of gold backgrounds. Figures seem to be floating in space. We really don't have a good sense of perspective or space. They have the elongated noses, wide eyes, solemn facial expressions, almond-shaped heads. The figures are tall and slim. They are usually the same height. They appear very flat. They have halos behind the heads. Lots of iconography, lots of religious imagery, almost no nudity. And every now and then you'll see a little bit of classical Greco-Roman influence, but for the most part, it's definitely the Byzantine characteristics that we just listed. Okay, and also very few portraits, very few individualized faces. So that's a big break from ancient Rome, which we just covered. So I think that covers it all. And I would say just make sure you finish reading the chapter. Oh, here's Andrei Rublev, so make sure you know him too. He's a master Russian icon painter. And also remember that icons are those small portable paintings, images of Christ and Mary. Okay, so also remember that term. Okay, and good luck, and I'll see you in the morning.